Introducing Kryptek's new hatch jacket. The jacket is secured with a full snap closure system along with 2 snap pockets. Fitted cuffs and waistband to ensure a perfect fit every time. Made with 100% polyester shell and finished with a DWR water-repelling treatment, the hatch is made with a quilted design and no hood to reduce bulk, making it versatile enough for any adventure. 200 grams of Primaloft synthetic insulation make the hatch light, quick drying, and ultra warm. Coming in 2 colors, the hatch jacket, only at Kryptek.com.
All right, Leadheads. We are back with another episode of the Talking Lead Podcast. I'm your host, Lefty. And we are in our 10th year of leducating the unleducated here at the Talking Lead Podcast. You liked that, didn't you?
Yes.
Trademark registered by Talking Lead. So, yeah, we're here. We're back. I took a little break. You guys know, a couple of weeks off there. You were probably longing for our episodes, but if you tuned into our social media, you were catching our live feeds and all the cool stuff that we were doing from Sturgis during the Gun Fest, the first annual Gun Fest there at the Buffalo Chip in Sturgis, South Dakota during Bike Week of all weeks. And it was a good time. So if you're listening to this episode, it will be the episode prior to this where we talk about our travels to South Dakota and all the fun and follies that we experienced during our trip. It was a good time with the crew from Kel-Tec and American Zealot Productions. So go check that episode out. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. This episode, we're switching gears. We're going from motorcycles to submarines. And that's what we do here. We shake it up on this podcast. You know, we talk about anything and everything because we want to show the diversity of the firearms community, that it's not just the good old Bubba network that the liberal media makes us out to be, but that everyone, all walks of life, liberal, conservatives, all colors, all religions, enjoy their firearms and their Second Amendment rights here in the United States of America. And we do that by having diverse guests on the show and diverse companies and diverse products. And this guest that we have on this episode is a former Navy Nuclear Submarine Officer. That's a mouthful. He is a best-selling author in the realm of leadership and motivation. And he has a podcast. And his books, he's got 3 books that I know of that are out. We're going to talk about his books. We're going to talk about submarines. And oh, by the way, he's also an avid bird hunter and a advocate for our Second Amendment rights. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Jon Rennie to the podcast. Did I say your last name right?
Yeah, Rennie.
Rennie.
Like a penny. Yeah.
Rennie like a penny.
Yeah, easy.
I like that. Jon, welcome in. We're very grateful to have you join us, and especially on such short notice. We kind of set this up real quick, last minute. Like I said, I've been out of town, and I'm doubling up to catch up. So thank you so much for taking the time to join the Leadhead Brigade.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Absolutely.
Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Wake Forest, North Carolina, which is just outside of Raleigh.
Oh, beautiful North Carolina. That's a gorgeous area up there. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. No, I'm from New England originally. I grew up in New Hampshire, went to school in Massachusetts, and then I was in the military. So I moved around quite a bit. And then then I spent 22 years in corporate America doing the same thing, moving around quite a bit. So, now we've been in North Carolina quite some time now. We've kind of found the happy medium between too hot and too cold, I think. So.
Yeah. So you went from government work to corporate work to your own individual private ownership of your own company, and that's kind of the steps that I followed. Also, I didn't do military or anything like that, but I worked for the government. I did some government work for several years. Then I decided I want to get into the corporate side of things, and I did corporate America for several years. And then, after seeing all the dubiousness and, all the, I guess, incompetence that I was experiencing with the people that were above me, I decided, you know what, I could do a whole lot better on my own. And I branched out and did the kind of the same. So different industries that we were in, but we kind of walk in the same path of life. So we want to hear your story about how you got started with your career in the military, moving on to the corporate, and then moving on into the private sector there. But first, John, I kind of prepared you for this beforehand.
Oh, jeez.
It's time for the Talking Lead Trains and Planes segment, where we take care of some jackwagons and we honor some heroes. So, Gunny, bring that train in.
Hoorah, Semper Fi, do or die, hold 'em high at 8th and I. It is time for the Talking Lead Jackwagon of the Week, so brace yourself, baby.
So the Gunny has brought the train in, and we got some jackwagons that we want to take care of. And as I like to do, I like to start with our guests. So, John, if you've got a jackwagon in mind that you would like to call out, now's the time to do it. Or if you want me to warm you up, I'd be happy to do that too.
No, I was just thinking about, I don't know, around Christmas time, there was a CEO who fired 900 of his employees right before Christmas via a Zoom call.
Oh my gosh.
I wrote about it on my podcast. Forget the guy's name. It doesn't matter what his name is. But if you're going to fire 900 people before Christmas, you probably are a jackwagon, I would imagine.
No doubt about it. That reminds me of, did you ever watch Christmas Vacation, the movie Christmas Vacation?
Oh, yeah, that's the best. Yeah.
It's the best. Is it Christmas Vacation or was it? Yeah, it was Christmas Vacation where his boss cut out the Christmas bonuses.
You got the Jelly of the Month Club.
The Jelly of the Month Club, yeah. So even worse, he fired people. So yeah, that guy is definitely deserving of the Talking Lead Jackwagon train. No doubt about it.
Yeah, so, especially with no warning, just
yeah.
That
guy's got a special place in hell reserved for him.
Yeah, I think so.
No doubt about it. So my jackwagon, and kind of the jackwagon and the Leadhead Brigade hero roll into one, kind of a one-shot deal. So I'm sure a lot of you listeners are familiar with the I guess the hearings or whatever they want to call, where they've been putting several firearms manufacturers' feet to the fire and, having them come and testify in front of Congress. I think Daniel Defense is one, Ruger might be one, and then Smith & Wesson. Are you familiar with that, John?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So, it's stemming from the recent mass shootings that have happened during the Biden administration, I might add. So Smith & Wesson put out a public statement. The CEO of Smith & Wesson put out a public statement here. And I want to read this, and the jackwagons are the people and the organizations that are trying to ruin our Constitution, ruin our Second Amendment, our constitutional rights, especially our Second Amendment, by all their dubious means that they're doing here, and it's all political. It's very transparent what they're trying to do. So let me read this statement from Smith & Wesson CEO. It says, amid an unprecedented and unjustified attack on the firearms industry, Smith & Wesson Brands Incorporated President CEO Mark Smith responded Monday, and this would have been, I don't have an actual date on it. Today is the 24th, which is a Wednesday. So I don't know if it was this Monday or last Monday. But anyway, It says a number of politicians and their lobbying partners in the media have recently sought to disparage Smith & Wesson. Some have had the audacity to suggest that after they have vilified, undermined, and defunded law enforcement for years, supported prosecutors who refused to hold criminals accountable for their actions, overseeing the decay of our country's mental health infrastructure, and generally promoted a culture of lawlessness, which that is exactly what they have been doing. And you see me looking around, looking for my glasses. I'm going to need my glasses for this. Smith & Wesson and other fire manufacturers are somehow responsible for the crime wave that has predictably resulted from these destructive policies, but they are the ones to blame for the surge in violence and lawlessness, and they seek to avoid any responsibility for the crisis of violence they have created by attempting to shift the blame to Smith & Wesson, other firearms manufacturers, and law-abiding gun owners, which we see it daily, constantly, them pointing the fingers at us, law-abiding, responsible firearm owners. It is no surprise that the cities suffering most from violent crime are the very same cities that have promoted irresponsible, soft-on-crime policies that often treat criminals as victims and victims as criminals. Many of these same cities also maintain the strictest gun laws in the nation, but rather than confront the failure of their policies, certain politicians have sought more laws restricting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens while simultaneously continuing to undermine our institutions of law and order. And to suppress the truth, some now seek to prohibit fire manufacturers and supporters of the Second Amendment from advertising products in a manner designed to remind law-abiding citizens that they have a constitutional right to bear arms in defense of themselves and their families. And we've talked about this on the show many times about how we are being shadow banned, the firearms industry, anything firearms related on these social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, I'm sure Twitter. I don't do much Twitter, but definitely YouTube as well. So that's just kind of an example. And then he goes on to say, to be clear, a Smith & Wesson firearm has never broken into a home. A Smith & Wesson firearm has never assaulted a woman for a late-night run in the city. A Smith & Wesson firearm has never carjacked an unsuspecting driver stopped at a traffic light. So what he means by that is a firearm is an inanimate object. It's not alive. It cannot do these things on its own. It has to be willed to do that by a human, by a person. So that's what he means by that. So he goes on to say, instead, Smith & Wesson provides these citizens with the means to protect themselves and their families. We are proud of our 170-year history. We are proud of the commitment of our employees to making a quality product. We are proud to provide law-abiding citizens and law enforcement, our customers, with the tools to provide their security and independence. We are proud of our responsible business practices. We will continue to work alongside law enforcement, community leaders, and lawmakers who are genuinely interested in creating safe neighborhoods. We will engage those who genuinely seek productive discussions, not a means of scoring political points. We will continue informing law-abiding citizens that they have a constitutionality-protected right to defend themselves and their families. We will never back down in our defense of the Second Amendment. Smith & Wesson Empowering Americans. And that was a direct quote from Mark Smith, the CEO, president of Smith & Wesson. And I mean, that sums it up perfect. And I don't know why more manufacturers haven't come out in this manner to fight against, to speak up against all the lobbying, all the gun grabbing that's going on and has been going on. But if we get more pushback like this from our industry, then that's the only way that we can make change and keep our Second Amendment rights. So he is my hero for this episode of the Talking Lead Planes and Trains. So welcome to Lead Force One. That's what our Leadhead Brigade heroes get a ride on. Is this nice, big, cushy 747 jumbo tricked out jet. French Corinthian leather seats. It's got a nice bar, top of the line meals. So that's my hero. Have you got any heroes?
I had him on our podcast, a guy by the name of Ken Blanchard, who's written.
I've heard of Ken Blanchard.
Yeah, he's written like 65 books on leadership, and he's getting old now. He's in his 70s now, and but he's still writing books. He's still trying to just teach people how to be great leaders. And I look up to someone who's been in the industry a long time, and he's been preaching a good message for a long time. He's still doing it, still writing books, and he's someone that I've read his books when I was a young manager, and now as an older manager, older leader, I'm still reading his books. So he's one of my heroes.
Very good. And you had him on your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your podcast. What is the name of your podcast?
My podcast is called Deep Leadership, and I have guests on all the time, and I have CEOs, military leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, researchers, and it's all based on the subject of leadership. So what are some of the best practices? What are some of the theories? Who's doing it right? Who's doing it wrong? How does leadership change now? Pre-COVID, mid-COVID, post-COVID. We went through all that over the past 2.5 years. So it's all just bringing on really experts and picking their brains and trying to find the best ideas to be able to lead people better. And that's what it's all about. So, the purpose of the podcast is to build a world with better bosses. That's essentially what we do. And
nice.
It's all about leadership. Yep.
Very good. And that's called Deep Leadership.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that's on any podcasting app our listeners can go.
Yeah, it's on it all. Yeah, there isn't. I think we're on every one of them now. So
okay. And then your website, I know there's links from your website. And if you leadheads want to go to Jon Rennie, it's JONRENNIE.com. And there's
JonSrennie.com. My middle initial.
Oh, I missed the S. I'm sorry. Jon JONSRENNIE.com. And it's got links to
glasses on too.
There's no excuse for that one, was there? I was just being lazy, man. I was being lazy. But there's links to his books, his podcasts. He does. He's got a blog. And then there's links to, you've been on tons and tons of other podcasts. I was just going through the list there, and
mostly
leadership
and business podcasts. I think it's the first time I've been on a gun podcast. And I think when we were emailing back and forth, I thought it was lead. It's not talking lead. I talk about lead. You talk about lead. So
yeah, but I mean, we do get into exactly what you are talking about, because the whole thing on the show is, we like to keep it positive by having people on that encourage you and make you a better person, and being a better leader is going to make you a better person in general.
Absolutely. Think about it. We're leading all the time, whether it's in our family as a father or a husband or a wife, or and in community organizations. You might teach Sunday school, you might lead a Boy Scout troop, what have you. But we're all Little League or soccer. We're all leaders in our everyday walk in life. And so how do we be more effective? And what I like to talk about, and most of my books are based on the idea that leadership is a people business. So it's about people, it's about relationships, it's about building relationships, building trust. And it's kind of old fashioned, but it's kind of missing, because I think we're hurting in leadership these days. I mean, you probably talk a lot about the politics of the day, but it's easy to look at our politicians and see a lack of leadership. For example, when you see mandates, I always say that's a failure in leadership to lead, right? And when you inspire people to do something, that's one thing. But when you recognize they don't do it, and you have to mandate things, and you have to create enemies, so that and you lower the value of the people that are not following your mandates, then you're not leading. You're basically a dictator at that point. And so, yeah, we've seen it a lot in politics for a long time. To be honest, but it seems to be getting worse. To be honest, so
it does, and it seems in my 51 years on this planet, and going through the different political climates. It's definitely shifted and it's changing, and in my opinion, it does seem to be getting worse instead of better. And I don't know if that's with the advent of social media, or what it is, but there's definitely been a drastic change in not only our country's leadership, but even with some of in yourself being in the corporate world nowadays. Seeing how some of these companies are being run. So definitely noticeable from my standpoint.
Yeah, like we were talking about our jack wagons. The guy I mentioned his name is I forgot what his name was when you asked me what his name was Vishal Garg, and he led a mortgage company called Better.com. His personal net worth is $4 billion, $4 billion with a B, and he's the one that laid off 900 employees right before Christmas. And that's the kind of leadership we have in corporate America. And I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to bring up the next generation leaders to have some value, some integrity, some faith in people, and not create the next egocentric micromanagers. A lot of what we have in corporate today.
So let's talk about your travels to becoming the leader that you are today, and let's take it way back, John. Let's take it back to your childhood. Yeah. So you grew up on the East Coast, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town. Well, it's the largest city north of Boston. It's Manchester, New Hampshire, but it's only 100,000 people there, so fairly small city. Mm-hmm. Grew up there. All four of my grandparents were born in that city. My parents were born in that city. I was born in that city. It's a blue collar city where most people, you're born there, you live there, you die there. So not a lot of people launch themselves from Manchester, New Hampshire into anything much. But I had the fortune of having two grandfathers who served in World War II, one in the Army and one in the Navy. And I think listening, as a child, listening to their stories, in my mind, of adventure, kind of leaving the confines of my little city and going and do these amazing things around the world. I said to myself, well, that's, what I want to do, right? I want to do something amazing. I don't want to just, live in this town. And so I got fascinated early on with the idea of submarines. My grandfather on one side, who was in the Navy, was involved in some pretty historic battles in the North Atlantic against German U-boats. And fortunately, his destroyer escort came out on top. But I remember hearing those stories and thinking to myself, the idea of an underwater warship and the idea of being stealth, be able to sneak up on shipping. And so as a child, as a teenager, I was fascinated with the World War II stories.
And what era did you grow up in?
So I'm 55. So
okay.
I'm growing up pre Reagan, and
so I'm 51. So we're about the same.
Yeah. So when as a freshman in high school, that's when Reagan took over and started calling the Soviet Union the evil empire. Started saying we're gonna win the Cold War. And then he said something that really sparked my a child's imagination. He said, "And submarines will play a key part in that victory." And I was like, all right, sign me up. Where do we go? And as a high school freshman, that's all I wanted to do.
Really?
From that point on, I wanted to serve on the boats. So I wanted to be an officer.
Even after watching Top Gun, I mean, you still went the Navy route, but you didn't want to be an aviator. You wanted to be a submariner, huh?
So I spent my freshman year in college, between my freshman and sophomore. No, it was my freshman year in college. I was in the Navy through ROTC, and I actually went down to Pensacola and did some pilot training for a week. And at the end of that, I was like, no, that's not for me. So, I'd rather be under the ocean than in the air somewhere. At least under the ocean, you can get to the surface pretty easily. If you run out of propulsion, you're going down fast.
Right, you're going to hit hard.
Yeah. So I didn't fall into the Top Gun trap. Although I had the same uniform as those guys. So,
I did.
Oh, you did. A lot of people did. But I had the same cool uniform, the choker whites and all that. So that did help with the ladies. So, yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Very nice. So right out of high school, you joined the Navy?
Yeah. So, to become an officer, you have to, especially on a submarine, you have to have a technical degree. You have to go to college and have a technical degree. So that's the thing I learned in high school. I talked to my guidance counselor. I remember went up to him and said, "Hey, I want to be a submarine officer. What do I do?" And the guy was like, "I don't know. You're the first person who ever said that to me." But to his credit, he did the research and said, "Well, you got to have a good technical. You got to study math and science, obviously, and then you have to go to college, get a good technical degree." If you want to get to the fleet, because you have to qualify as a nuclear engineer, which is what I did. So I did pretty good in high school, got into a pretty good engineering school. I went to Worcester Polytech in Worcester, Mass. And I studied engineering, something, and again, I should point out that my family is blue collar, like no one went to college and, and certainly no one became an engineer, and certainly no one was a submarine officer. So
sure.
I was doing stuff that was way outside of what, traditional my family did. So, so I went through, I got an ROTC scholarship 4 years. I did 4 years engineering school. Then I got my commission and went to the fleet at that point.
Okay. And how many years did you spend in the Navy?
I was in for 5 years, active duty, right out of college.
Right out of college. Very nice.
Yeah.
And what did you do on the nuclear submarine? What was your specialty?
So I was what they call a line officer, and line officer is someone that's being trained to one day take over command. So you end up having multiple different jobs. So for the time I was on board for 5 years, I had 3 different jobs. So my first job, I was the reactor controls officer. So I was responsible for all the men that maintained and operated all the equipment around the reactor, all the electronic equipment. Mm-hmm. And then my next role, I was the machinery division officer. So I had the entire engine room was my responsibility. And then I became the missile officer. So I had the 24 I can say it now, nuclear missiles we were carrying were under my responsibility.
Oh, wow. That's a huge responsibility.
It is, especially when you're like 23 years old.
23-year-old in charge of 24 nuclear bombs.
It's wild. Yeah, it's wild. So
how many different submarines did you serve on?
I was just on one. I was on the USS Tennessee the whole time. She was a brand new Ohio class, submarine.
USS Tennessee.
You like Tennessee?
That's where I'm at, baby.
All right.
Go Vols.
Yeah, so we actually have orange in our patch, our USS Tennessee patch it's got a salute to the volunteers in our patch.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
I got to get one of those.
Yeah, she was a brand new Ohio class submarine, first Ohio class submarine for the East Coast. She was brand new when I got to her, so she made a lot of deployments, and she's still operating today, which is amazing. And I'm calling her because AP just came out to say that you can't call ships hers anymore. So, and I say, screw that.
That's the way it's always been.
Always been hers.
Boats have always been hers, right?
Exactly. Yeah, she's a great boat.
Naval vessels, I'll say.
Yeah, exactly. So a great boat, and it was just awesome time. Really enjoyed. I did seven patrols, seven patrols during the end of the Cold War. I got to see the Cold War come to an end while I was on board. So it was kind of neat to be a part of that, part of history, essentially.
So let's talk about, you say Ohio class. There are different classes of submarines. So kind of educate us on that aspect of a submarine.
Well, in the U.S. Navy, there's 3 types of submarines. They're the fast attack submarines. These are typically the smallest and the fastest of boats. They typically don't carry nuclear weapons, but they are meant to protect fleets and to go after enemy shipping. So these are called fast attack. We have an SSGN, which are guided missile submarines, and these are they're actually they're ballistic missile submarines that have been converted into missile submarines where they're launching conventional missiles, and they also deploy Navy SEALs. So the SSGN is a platform that deploys Navy SEALs, and it shoots a lot of missiles like Tomahawk missiles at typically land targets. And then the final type, the type I was on, was a ballistic missile submarine, which is carrying the large nuclear weapons that are a big part of our strategic deterrence during the Cold War, and then during and now, of course, I don't know what we call now.
I don't know what now is. I mean, we'll know 10 years from now. They'll have a name for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, so the Russians were our enemies, then they became our friends, and now they're our enemies. I guess I don't know. I can't keep track of it.
It seemed to be everybody's enemy, but China's.
Right, exactly. So,
is this a picture of the USS Tennessee right here?
Well, absolutely, that's it. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on that bridge. So yeah.
And this is the bridge up here.
Yeah, that's the bridge, and those are the various periscopes and radars and things like that. So I don't see any radar deployed, but
yeah. So I was trying to find a really good picture of it, but you don't really see many pictures of a sub underwater. I haven't been able to find those either. Submerged.
Yeah, well, it's usually dark under there. That's why.
Yeah, but with today's technology, you'd think we'd have something. Come on.
I had an opportunity to have the former head of SEAL Team 2 on my podcast, and he said, "Yeah," he goes, "I love submarines." I said, the most amazing thing was parachuting down on a submerged one in the Caribbean. You could see it all the way under the water. The water was so clear.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, I thought I was cool. That guy's like super cool.
So
diving, jumping out of a plane towards a submerged submarine.
Yeah, I've had several Navy SEALs on this show, and one particularly that's in your realm of expertise, the leadership industry. Jay Redmond, are you familiar with Jason Redmond?
Yeah.
Okay,
I am.
Yeah, so he's been on. I've had him on a couple of times, and I mean his speeches and his motivation are very infectious. Really good speaker. Really liked having him on. Commander Coulter, who I've been working with on some projects that I can't talk about yet, but we're going to talk about them on upcoming projects. And he's been on the show a couple of times, so you lead heads that are familiar with Commander Coulter know probably what I'm talking about. But, so what was the guy that you had? What was his name? I may know him.
Jack Riggins.
Riggins?
Yeah.
There it is.
Jack Riggins.
So Jack, and he was on your podcast, so people can go and check out that episode with Jack. I've not had Jack on. I'm not familiar with Jack. But
you ought to. He's good guy. Really
I would love to. Yeah. Like I said, I've had several. I mean, in 10 years of doing this podcast, I can't remember everybody I've had on, but
that's my problem right now. I've had, I'm starting to forget people that have been on the show. It's actually fun to listen to old episodes. You're like, oh, that was such a great conversation. But
it was like, I forgot that, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of deal.
Exactly.
But the White Settle, who is one of the owners of SEAL 1, is a CLP product, another former Navy SEAL, and they're one of our sponsors as well. But I love hearing their stories. We had... Well, he goes by Jack Carr. Jack Carr, the author. We've had him on, and just listening to their stories, man, it's just to just fantasize through them and hear the stories that they've had, and compare it to some of these movies that you see. It's amazing. So you said you had the opportunity to work with some SEALs on your submarines. In what capacity did you interact with them?
We were ballistic missile submarines, so we did not carry the SEALs on our platform. So, but a lot of the former Ohio class boats that were set up for ballistic, they were converted to guided missile boats, and they carry that. If you ever see a picture of a Ohio class submarine that looks like got a tin can on the top of it, so that's actually the SEAL delivery vehicle. So that's what they use to the SEALs will deploy out of. So we didn't have that function. We didn't operate with SEAls on our. So
platform. You didn't shoot them through the torpedo launchers?
No, sadly that would have been fun, but no, we did not. So we carried conventional torpedoes and then nuclear missiles. So we were the our mission was to hide with pride.
Hide with pride.
And be there.
Stay undetected.
Yeah. We talked. Yesterday we were talking. Concealed carry. We're kind of that concealed carry. We're that weapon just in case.
Hey, that's a great way to put it. I was looking for one of those that might be like the ones you're talking about, but I don't know.
Look up if you look up SSGN, and I'm trying to think. I think the Florida is an SSGN now. It's been converted. But if you look up an SSGN, we didn't have the SSGNs when I was in. So this is a recent thing. As the Cold War ended, we were like, well, we got these amazing platforms. What are we going to do with them? And then they created these SSGNs. I think the USS Florida is an example of them. There's USS Ohio is one of them. There you go. You see that.
Oh, this thing here?
Yeah, that's where they'll launch the SEALs out of. So, yeah, the same exact platform I was on, but it's been modified to carry conventional missiles and to deliver SEALs. And I believe the USS Ohio actually has 2 of those on its backside, so which I think is unique. So, but I don't know much about. I've interviewed some SSGN's officers on my podcast, but I have not. I wish they were around during my time. I definitely would have been on. I would want to be on that platform because it's pretty unique. So they can go in a conventional war and they can launch a lot of Tomahawk missiles, deploy Navy SEALs, and so it's the kind of warfare that we're into these days. It's been converted into a much more usable platform than the ballistic missile boats.
Gotcha. So you said you served 5 years. So what year was it that did you retire? Is that how we would?
No, I just got out in 1994. Okay. I my 5 year.
Did your 5 year deal?
Yeah, and part of the reason was I absolutely love what I did, but nobody senior of me, like all the senior officers and senior enlisted, had all been divorced at least once. So this was not a business for having a family and being having a normal life. So we spent a lot of time out at sea, and back then we were completely isolated. So there was no communication whatsoever. So no email, no phone calls. You were just gone for 3 months, and then you came back. So it was a different lifestyle, and it was not good for marriages and families. So I got out, went into the corporate world like a lot of people do, but I really enjoyed my time, and it was kind of fun to be there, to see the Soviets disappear from the Atlantic Ocean. They went from having a ton of submarines and ships all over the Atlantic to having virtually none by the time I got out.
And why was that? Because they just decommissioned them, or were they getting
they ran out of money.
They were just sinking.
They couldn't pay their sailors, they couldn't feed their sailors, they couldn't keep their boats maintained, and so they disappeared.
Yeah. So what was the longest deployment underwater that you
110 days.
110 days. Yeah. And how many people were on your submarine?
We had 155 in the crew. So it was like 15 officers, and then the rest enlisted sailers. Is that
one of the largest submarines?
It is, yeah. The Ohio class is the largest U.S. submarine. It doesn't. I mean, the Soviets had bigger boats, but this is the biggest U.S. boat.
Yeah. So being underwater for that long, that amount of time, what kind of effects does that have? You hear about the astronauts and being out in the the weightlessness and all that it does things to the bones and to the muscles. And are there any adverse effects?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's weird is you don't have any distance vision. You lose your farsightedness because you never use it because when you're underwater for that long. So it takes you a while to get that back again. The other thing is when you first get into a car after being on a submarine that long, is everything seems so much faster. You're just like, oh, slow down, because your body has not gone that fast because it's a slow moving vessel. Basically, it's not a very speedy vessel, but so things seem to be faster. The other thing is,
but you have no reference points to the speed or anything, because I don't guess you have like windows and things that you can look out.
There's no windows. You have no reference on speed. Yeah, so that's a little bit. It takes a while to get used to. The other thing is you'll notice you'll be taking a shower on land and you'll notice you're still swaying to the ocean, but there's no ocean. You're like, why am I still swaying? So it takes you a while to get your land legs back after you've been out to sea that long. And, but the other thing too is, so inside a submarine, if you can imagine 155 dudes, right? So what do you think that smelled like on board, right?
Oh my gosh, worse than our RV trip to Sturgis, I'm sure.
So yeah, you're talking burps and farts and everything, under
stinky feet.
100%, smelly armpits, you name it. But you get to the point where you just get used to it. And so when you smell fresh air, it actually smells horrible. When they first open up the hatches, you're like, this is terrible. What is that smell? And so you get used to it. And your clothes will smell like that. The uniforms we wore undersea, these one-piece coveralls we wore, they smell like that submarine. You can't get that smell out of them.
Even if you dry clean it, you can't get that out?
You can't get it out. It's just, even today, I've got some in the attic. They still smell like the boat. You just can't get that
Bring
smell
back
out.
memories, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. But it stinks. And, but you get used to it and you don't even notice it, And the other thing is too, there's always air moving around on a submarine. So we have ventilation fans running at 60 hertz all the time, that there's a hum, and you cannot get, when it goes silent, like when those fans go off, that's our biggest fear. And so sometimes at night when you're back home, you can't hear those fans and you can't sleep. You're like, where's that hum?
You start panicking a little bit.
It's a constant background through your entire day and night, and every day, every night for months on end. So
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you get used to that frequency, and I'm sure that does something with your brain waves and the harmonics of your body. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know, but it takes a while to get used to living on land again.
So not having night and day references either. How did that affect your sleep cycles? And
yeah, so it's interesting. Back then we operate we had 4 shifts. We had 4 6-hour watches essentially. So that meant we had 4 meals a day. We had breakfast, lunch, we had dinner, and then we had mid-rats, which was the midnight ration. So you ate at 6, noon, 6, and midnight. So you ate every 6 hours and you stood watch every 6 hours. So mostly the only time you really knew if it was night or day was what they were serving. So if it was eggs, you're like, this must be morning. And if it's burgers, you're like, okay.
So they could have really messed with you and just switched the menu on you, and you still you wouldn't have known what time of day it was.
Well, and so we actually operated on something called Tennessee time. This was my captain's idea. So we would operate 12 hours opposite of the local times. So if it was 6 a.m, we would be operating at 6 p.m. So if it was 3 p.m. local time, it'd be 3 a.m. And the reason is that most of the sailors are up during the normal day period. So from 6 to about 6 p.m, 6 a.m, 6 p.m. And that's when we ran our drills. And so the captain if we were running a drill, we had to go to the periscope depth. He wanted it to be at nighttime. So we would change our clocks 12 hours to be opposite of whatever the local time was. So it would mess with you. So you could get jet lag without ever going anywhere, because suddenly it was, daytime, and you're like, well, you go from, you have lunch and then you have lunch again, like, oh, it would just kind of mess with your brain a little bit. But yeah. And like a lot of times as an officer, I'd forget that it was dark outside, because you're thinking, well, it's 8 a.m, we're about to do a drill. I go up and it's dark. I'm like, oh, that's right. It's really at night. Yeah. Yeah. So,
but I guess you were all over the globe in the sub, or were you just kind of in the vicinity of American?
Yeah, we operated in the full body of the Atlantic Ocean. So we and my first few patrols, we operated closer to Russia in the North Atlantic. We had an advanced missile on board. It was a Trident II D5 missile, and it had the longest range and accuracy of any ballistic missile submarine. So eventually they realized we could hit all of our targets just basically anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean. So it made sense to just hide us in random places. And so pretty much I've been in the entire Atlantic Ocean at some point.
So never over in the Pacific. You're always in the Atlantic.
I was an Atlantic sailor. Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now you're talking about the missiles, and nowadays we're hearing more about is it hypersonic missiles?
Yeah,
that are being developed. What's your take on those, the hypersonic missiles?
Yeah, I don't know much about them other than it was supposedly, they get on target so quick that we can't react. So it changes the whole balance of deterrence. But I don't know much about it.
I can't imagine we don't have that technology too.
I don't know anything. I have no inside knowledge, but I guarantee you we got something. I mean, think about all the
I don't know anything.
Billions. Think about all the billions that are given to these these defense contractors. I guarantee we got something. So if we don't have something, we got something in the works.
Yeah, definitely probably something that will stop them or deter them. I don't know.
If I heard the Pentagon talking more about it, I'd be worried, but you don't hear them talk about it. So we must have something. So
they only talk about stuff that they don't. It's all misinformation,
Right,
it's all a big misinformation campaign, and
right.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all.
Yeah, what makes you wonder, right? When like in the middle of COVID, right? The biggest news story that didn't exist was the fact that the government told us that UFOs existed, and everyone went.
They're like, we knew that.
So, but it makes you think, like, if they're admitting that UFOs exist, maybe they don't exist, and it's a misdirection, right? So
right, because all the years they've been denying it and try to hide it and cover it up, and then now all of a sudden
they're like, oh yeah, they're real.
They're admitting it, kind of deal. Yeah. But speaking of, I mean, in this, I usually ask this later on, but I'll go ahead and ask it now since we were talking about it. What's your take on UFOs, and specifically aliens, UFOs, not unidentified flying objects? Because
I'm one of those guys that hope they exist just because I think it's cool. But I was of the age, and you're probably similar, like, Close Encounters came out, and like
Star Wars,
like
Close
70s,
Encounters, Star Trek.
Big on alien shows. There was Project Blue Book was a show that was on TV back then, and so I'm one of the guys that hopes they're real. But I have no idea.
And you've never had any encounters at sea, because a lot of them are talking about underwater. Now that they're talking about that's where the majority of them are they live in the ocean.
Yeah, so interesting. I did Ask Me Anything on Reddit one time, and that I got more questions on UFOs than anything else. And I can tell you this: I was under the ocean for 5 years, and I did not see any UFOs. So take it for what it's worth. And I'm not under any obligation to not tell you the truth.
You're not any NDAs or anything like that?
No. I never saw anything.
And you've probably got some of the most sophisticated radar detection systems than any other probably vehicle or branch of the military in your submarines, I would assume.
Yeah. But again, it would be hard. I mean, we use passive sonar to listen into the ocean. So if these things are silent, we wouldn't hear them. So
and like you said, you don't have windows on subs, so you can't have windows. You can't look out. So
no, and you got to remember that everything in the military is geared towards the enemy we were facing, not a UFO. So we wouldn't necessarily have the right gear for identifying. And
do you have cameras on the outside that you can?
So I think today that they do operate a lot of remote cameras inside the periscopes and things, but we did not. And I'll tell you this kind of funny story. I was actually the ship's photographer for a couple patrols, and we literally had a 35 millimeter camera we would strap on to the periscope to take pictures of enemy ships.
That's hilarious.
So, yeah. So people don't realize
technology.
Yeah, I mean, 1994 was when I got out, and computers were just really getting going, and the internet was still like chat rooms and things. So it was really early when I was in
MySpace kind of stuff.
I think it's pre-MySpace.
Pre-MySpace, yeah. So and that also is an ask. I don't know why they wouldn't put cameras all around it, everywhere, not just for research purposes. It's like a submarine being that depth, going that much ocean. I mean, think of all the I'm gonna say wildlife, sea life that you could detect and find. Probably thousands of species we never even seen before.
Yeah, so we hear them. So we have hydrophones all over the submarine that we can listen in. So like when I'd be on the mid watch, I'd have a couple speakers next to my operating area, and I would turn up the hydrophones just to listen to the ocean sounds, and we hear all sorts of stuff. But it's so dark where we operate that a window really wouldn't be pretty useless. I know,
but you got all this tech. You got thermal. You've got infrared. You can't use any of that underwater.
I don't know. Maybe today. I don't know. But back then it was, but it was just
that's
dark.
True back then. Yeah.
It's dark and it's cold and it's not much going on. I mean, the ocean is really big.
Well, how do you know? You didn't have windows. You couldn't see. How do you know?
Right.
Maybe it was the world's largest whale down there or something that you.
We would put up the periscope before we would go to periscope depth, and you could look around the periscope. And as you get close to the surface, the light would start coming in. You could see things. Occasionally, you see fish swimming like right behind the periscope. Just sort of, you'd be staring at a fish's eyeballs, but there wasn't much to see. It's a big ocean, it really is.
It is, and that again, I don't. And maybe they do it nowadays. Maybe they have the cameras and they're recording this stuff. And I mean, who knows? I don't. Somebody knows.
I don't know.
You don't know. I'm out. He's like, I am out. So what is the weirdest encounter that you experienced? And you said the longest time that you were submerged was 120 days or 110?
110, yeah.
Is that completely without coming up to the surface at all, or?
Yeah, no, we would come up to periscope depth, but so surfacing the boat was typically at the end of patrol. We would take the boat. We would actually come out of the water, but we would come out to pick up riders, different people that would be coming on the boat to evaluate us and what have you. So no, that wasn't.
So there was no periodic breaks where you would come up during that 110 days to get people exposure to sunlight or anything like that come out, or
no.
So it was completely in that.
Yeah, I would say 90 days of completely under without surfacing. So you were just periscope depth would be the closest you come to the surface.
And what do you do on a submarine for? You say 6 on. You got 4 shifts of 6. Is that what it's?
So it depends on how many people.
What do you do when you're not working?
So you would run your department. Like I had, I was in charge of different departments, and I'd run my department, and then I would sleep and get ready for the next watch. And typically, what you did is you'd have one watch. You stand watch. You would work. So you stand watch for 6 hours. You'd work for 6 hours, and you would sleep for 6 hours, and you go back on watch. So you're pretty much like an 18-hour day essentially. But your sleeping window was in one of those watch sections, and most times they were running drills during your sleep time, so you never really got much sleep. So we were always sleep deprived. Yeah.
And during your time, again, technology's wasn't the way it is nowadays. I can imagine that on subs now they've got TVs and movies and video games and things like that to keep them occupied during the downtimes, maybe exercise equipment. I'm sure you guys probably had some sort of gym or something like that.
We had a gym. We had a gym in missile compartment lower level. We had 2 treadmills. We had a couple of exercise bikes, a rowing machine, and then like a universal weight machine. So we had that, and so we had movies. In fact, we had actually first run movies they'd put on the boat for us. So they were all VHS back then, but we had a big live. Yeah, we had a big library of VHS films, and a lot of the guys would bring their own, VHS tapes from home. I remember one guy was.
Oh, I bet they did.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But we had one guy from Georgia that liked the Andy Griffith Show, so every time he was in the wardroom. Every time he was in the wardroom, and I'm from the north, I never saw that show, and I didn't quite relate, but yeah, we would get Andy Griffith.
How could you not? I mean, one of the greatest leaders of all time, Andy Griffith.
Well, I appreciate it now, but back then, I thought, what is this country bumpkin?
I learned a lot of life lessons from watching Andy Griffith, Barney Fife, Little Opie, Little Opie, and what was his aunt?
B?
Aunt B.
Aunt B.
Aunt B. Yeah.
So you'd get all that kind of stuff, and you mentioned the other thing of it was kind of funny is pornography was interesting.
I didn't mention that.
Some people would bring those, and it is funny that the chief's quarters. Now, chiefs are the senior enlisted sailors on the boat, so they've come up through the ranks, and so they're still below officers, but they're above most of the sailors, and they had their own quarters. And so as an officer, you had to go in the chief's quarters a lot to talk to your chief because they're typically your second in command of your division. And many times you go into the chief's quarters and there's, porn
stuff going on
the TV. And you're like,
just everyday happenstance.
Why are you doing that? You should just forget about that for 3 months because it's or 6 months.
I mean, it's human nature. How do you forget about that? And I guess at the time when you were saying there were no women allowed.
Right.
Is that still the policy nowadays?
No, they have women on board the SSBNs and SSGNs now, the bigger submarines.
Okay, and that's like a mixed men women, or is that all women crew? Or
no, it's a mix. It's a mix. Yeah.
What do they call that?
Co-ed.
There you go. It's been a while.
Yeah. I had one of the first female submarine officers on my podcast, and it was interesting because I wanted to talk to her about what her experience was like compared to my experience.
I'll bet.
And I would say this is that she had the same experience I did. It's still all the frustrations, the challenges. She had it just like I did. But even then, it was like more difficult for her is that she was one of the first women on a submarine. So like everyone had been like warned before she got here how to act around women, so everyone was just afraid. So she said she would come down a hallway and everybody would just move out of her way and stare straight ahead, and she's like, look, I'm human, you can look at me, you can talk to me, right? So everyone was just afraid,
in that environment, and her kind of being a trailblazer. It takes some adjustment.
But she was, from all intents and purposes, she was a very competent officer, and I was glad to talk to her. Just it was good to know that the standards weren't lowered. It's difficult to do that job, and the women that are on board are doing that job, doing it well, from what I can tell.
Yeah. And what was your rank?
I was lieutenant when I got out.
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, I was Lieutenant John.
John.
Yeah.
So I've got lots of other submarine questions. I could go on for hours asking you about submarines. But so 5 years on the submarine. You got to be very disciplined in that environment, structured. I would assume that's probably played a big role in you developing the leadership skills that you have today. Moving on from that, you said when you got out of the Navy, you went into corporate America, and you've run, was it 20 different?
8 different manufacturing businesses.
Or 20.
Well, it was 22 years. I ran 8 different manufacturing busineses during that time. So,
okay, that's what it was.
Yeah. So I got my fill of corporate life, what it's like to work for 3 different global companies. So that meant a lot of global travel. It meant, operating these big manufacturing plants, and but it also meant.
I would assume you've got an engineering background. Is that what your course of study?
I have a mechanical engineering degree. My undergrad is in. So yeah.
Gotcha. And talk about some of the corporate companies that you ran during those 20 years. Maybe some of the more memorable ones.
Yeah, my first plant was we were a manufacturing plant in Florence, South Carolina, making circuit breakers that were 15,000 volt circuit breakers, very large circuit breakers, and that was a lot of fun because it was the first time that I had my own manufacturing business. It was sort of like being captain of your own ship because we were remote, like there was no other corporate businesses around, so I was like the the biggest guy in the company, in that state essentially. So, there was no one around locally. So it was kind of fun to be remote and have your own business. But there was a lot of challenges with that. So because I was so new, I was 32 years old when I got my first manufacturing plant. I didn't really know much about manufacturing. So, but that the crew that worked there they were just a great group of people, and they embraced this. I was the youngest manager in that plant's history, so they embraced this young looking and young manager that came in and did his best. And I think it was there where I really learned the power of people, because I think when I first went into the role, I thought, well, I had to have all the answers. I was the boss. I've been promoted, right? So I got to have all the answers. I got to dictate things from the corner office. You go here, you go there, you do this. But what I realized is that it didn't take me too long to realize that all the knowledge for running this business resided in the minds of the experienced employees. And so I learned through that first role in corporate that if I tap into all this, wisdom that we had in that building, we were going to be a much better operation. So, So I was, for me, it was about breaking down the walls between hourly and salaried employees and building a team and getting us focused on one goal. And almost like back in the submarine days, we bring everybody together and operating towards a single mission. And that was a lot of fun. And it was a small operation, 140 people. So you could really, you knew everybody's name, you knew about their lives. And so I really enjoyed being out on the shop floor, getting to know people. That was my, still even to this day is probably the funnest job I ever had in corporate. Was running a small plant like that.
Was this in America, this plant? Because you said you've been all over the world.
Yeah, it was in Florence, South Carolina.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well,
to me, they spoke another language because I was from New England. I didn't quite understand what they were talking about.
Well, you don't have a New England accent. That's kind of why.
No, I do not. I've lost it over the years. So I go hunting in New Hampshire every year, and I can barely understand the people from my home state.
Do you start, when you go back home, do you start picking up that dialect again?
I don't think so. No, I don't.
You ever noticed it?
No, my father and brother and the guys I hunt with are very heavy New England accents, and I just have kept mine. And they always say, "Hey, you sound funny." I'm like, I don't sound funny. I sound like the folks on the national news. You sound funny.
You're just stealth. That's what you've adapted and blended in.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to it. Yeah, but we laugh about it because it's just the accent's so heavy up there.
Well, I noticed when I was in corporate, and when I worked, well, not so much when I worked for the government, because I worked for the state government here in Tennessee. So, but I noticed when I went corporate, I was losing my Southern accent. Just because I think Southern accents, people don't take you as serious or think you're as intelligent. They associate it with hillbilly redneck, kind of ways. And anywhere I would go, people go, where are you from? I'm from Tennessee. They're like, you don't have an accent. I was like, okay, maybe I don't. But when I got out of that and started doing it came back, and you can probably hear it now.
Yeah. I don't know where accents go, but I don't have as
much. I think it's just a human adaptive process that we go through. We try to fit in. We try to blend in with our surrounding environment. I think it's more of a survival type instinct.
Yeah. I think you're right. And the other thing I would say is that one of the things I noticed about myself just over the years is I tend to be a little empathetic. Like I'm really good at sales, for example, because I really do like empathize with my customers and the challenges that they have. I empathize with my employees and the frustrations they have. So I think part of being a good leader is having that ability to sense what the emotions are of the person across the table from you. And I think that's something that's been a little bit of a superpower that I have, is having the ability to, and I think probably as a result of that, I probably morph into my language, probably morphs to fit the situation like that too. I would imagine. Yeah.
But you can't really be empathetic towards someone unless you've actually experienced it yourself. So, going through your years of experience, that's things that you've experienced, and, you're able to, bring a what the word I'm looking for, but a real, come across as real and, with your empathy. And I'm sure they sense that. That's like, oh, he's been through this before. He understands exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think being, growing up blue collar was a big part of that. So I related more to the people on the shop floor than I did the people in the office, right? I related well to, the guy that was, had the manufacturing job that, was trying to pay his bills and trying to take care of his family. And I just I related more to that because that's where I grew up in. And I did not grow up in a place where there was a lot of money and there was a lot of, and we were
resources.
Fancy. Yeah. And resource. I mean, we didn't dress up. We, it's like even today, right? As an entrepreneur, I wear t-shirts and jeans and boots and that's what I wear. That's my uniform. And I have a closet full of corporate clothing I'd probably never wear again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Throw it away.
All my suits and everything are, they just got dust all over them, So
right.
My dress shoes. Oh my God. I haven't even looked at my dress shoes in years. So I don't, there's no telling what kind of condition. They probably got mold on them by now.
But I think that's having had that experience and coming up blue collar. I think it's funny because a lot of my peers didn't understand how I could relate well to the folks on the shop floor because a lot of them, their whole lives were about getting into management and getting the degrees and getting
climbing the ladder.
Climbing the ladder. I found myself sort of. My wife would say I was pulled kicking and screaming up the corporate ladder is what she would say. So I ended up getting a lot of responsibility and multiple plants and all this sort of things. But it was never anything I was applying for. It just sort of kept getting more and more responsibility. So.
Yeah. And, it seems – but so what I'm trying to say is that I noticed that a lot of former military people tend to be higher up in, the more successful companies. There seem to have more military type people that are leading and guiding those companies. Would you say that the military instills that? Because you hit on something a minute ago where you were talking about, taking a small group of people and focusing them on a single mission, to get it accomplished. Talk about the military and how maybe that played a part in your development.
Yeah, so the military leadership was it was considered a skill, and it was something that you trained and you learned and were taught. You couldn't be promoted into a higher level of leadership until you served as a lower level of leadership. So you grew as a leader from the ground up, essentially. And leadership training was a big part of everything we did. Even when I was in ROTC, before I got my commission, we took leadership classes. And so leadership was taught. So one of the things I noticed in my corporate career is that we treat leadership as sort of like an extra, like you're a really good engineer. So we're going to make you the engineering manager. So you're like, okay, well, now I've got the title of manager and I have no skill sets. I have none of this. I've got great engineering skills. Right. I don't have any leadership
I don't know
skills.
What managing means.
Yeah. So we look at leadership skills as like, oh, you'll figure it out. Right. But leadership is a whole nother, it's its own set of skills, and you have to learn them. You have to practice them. And typically it's best done, and the military did a really good job, under a mentor-mentee relationship where you had a senior leader helping a junior leader develop his or her skills, right? So that's why military leaders are so good when they get out, because they actually learned leadership. It is something they learned. Yes, like a SEAL was good at shooting and explosives and languages and all that, but he also learned leadership, and we also learned leadership. We were great at weapons. I was great at nuclear power and all that stuff, but I also learned leadership. It was a whole skill set.
Yeah.
And we don't look at it like a skill set. And that's where the biggest challenge is. No,
I was going to ask, how would you define leadership? What is leadership?
Yeah, it's motivating a group of people to get something done. It's that simple. It's three things. It's motivating, right? So you have to know your people, and it's people, so they get the job done, and it's your goal. What are you trying to accomplish? There's three things, and we make leadership to be more complicated than it needs to be. But it's those three things, right? And so we say, well, you need to be a servant leader. Well, that part of that is motivation. How do you motivate? How do you support? But it's all about those three things. And it's not, what leadership is not, is doing emails. It's not about a to-do list. It's not about conference calls. It's not about being busy. It's about leading people to get something done. Yeah, it's not about meetings. And so we confuse that, and we think that, well, if I get all my emails answered, then I'm a good leader. You're not. You're a good doer, but maybe you're a good manager, but you're not a good leader. So I think we confuse a lot of things. People get management titles, and they think that they're a leader, and they're not. It takes a special type of skills to be able to motivate a group of people to get difficult things done. So it's very difficult to do. But it's like chess, right? You can learn to play the game in a day, but it takes a lifetime to master. I think leadership is a lot like that.
Yeah. I just watched a documentary on chess the other day. I used to play it a lot growing up. I haven't played it in years, but I always wanted to know that castle move when you castle your king. Yeah. Because I would, people would do that, and I'm like, I don't understand that move. So I watched this documentary. I learned how to do it now, finally, after 30 years of
I love it.
I was like, oh, that's how you do it. And then I also learned about the pawn that you can, like, if you haven't moved your pawn yet and somebody passes your pawn or whatever, you know how the pawn takes them diagonally? Yeah. That you can, there's a move, I can't remember what it's called, but you can take somebody different than a diagonal move. I was like, oh, okay.
I'm not a chess expert, but I do know it's.
I'm not either.
Leadership is difficult, like chess is difficult.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about your books. How did you get into writing books? What one day you just woke up, hey, I'll write a book.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
No, it wasn't.
no. It's funny. As I mentioned, I did my time in the military, then did 22 years in corporate. I noticed that my businesses always did better than my peers, right? I always, my businesses performed very high levels. We always met our targets. We grew to record levels, and a lot of my peers were jealous of that. They were like, oh, they used to call me the golden child. Well, Rennie's the golden child. Everything he touches turns to gold. And I'm like, I am not a freaking golden child. Like, I am no expert in any of this stuff. But one of the things I did is I learned about the power of people and how, people properly motivated and properly treated. Number one, treating people with respect is like my number one rule. But you get more out of them. You get more things done. And especially when you share what the mission is and you get everybody on board that mission. And so it's like these simple things that I had done that yielded all these results. And I tried to talk to my peers like, well, this is what I did. It's not that hard, but here's how you can do it. But I think people thought there was some sort of something special I was doing. And it's not special at all. It's very basic.
You had this magic formula.
No, I did not. And but as I'm older now, in my 50s, I'm like, I've got to tell people, I want to teach the next generation about some of these things that I've learned over the years. And so I really felt strongly about writing it down and getting in the hands of people. And I wrote my first book, I guess 2019, 3 years ago now. And it really was just a really good basic guide for like good leadership principles. It's called Eye of the Watch. And that was the first book I wrote.
There it is.
And that one, it's extremely popular. It's, I've sold this book. I've been paying my mortgage with the sales of this book. It's nuts. Nice. So the book really took off, and it's crazy, and it's been all over the world. It's I had a call from just different calls I've had. One of it was the FBI headquarters in Washington D.C. is that they have a leadership training, and they have a leadership library. And the lady called me up and said that she wanted to let me know that my book is in their leadership library and the FBI. I had the current executive officer on the USS Tennessee call and asked me to he could use my book to train his current leaders on the Tennessee, the boat I served on, a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how many years it is, but
how awesome would that be if they invited you to come and
I would love that. I would love to just do one more run on a boat. I mean, just to get down there and submerge and you don't know how much guys like me miss those days. It was tough, but we certainly miss those days of being deployed and being part of a crew. But yeah, so the first book I wrote and it took off and went crazy, and so I really got the bug. So
3 years ago you did this. That was your first. You wrote "I Have the Watch."
Yeah, 3 years ago. And to be honest with you, I had another book in mind, and I had hired a writing coach to help me through the process. And one of the first things he had said to me is he said, don't write the big book first, write a smaller book. And I was like, well, I don't understand. I don't have a smaller book in my head. He's like, you've been writing articles for 15 years. Like, you have so much content out there. So we took a lot of my content from things I've written over the past 10 years and put it into this first book, I Have the Watch. Mm-hmm. But then the second book was the book I really wanted to write. And that's called All in the Same Boat. And that's really of all the books I've written, this is my favorite. It's really the book I wanted to tell the story. And in this book is kind of fun because it's sort of 8 major lessons I learned in the military, how I learned them in the military. So you're going to have lots and lots of stories from the boat. So if you want to know what it was like to be on board a deployed submarine at sea in the middle of the Cold War, you're going to get those stories. Nice. And then I actually tell the corporate stories, the business stories, how I took those ideas and I used them in running successful businesses in corporate and my own manufacturing business that I started 6 years ago. So this is really the book I wanted to write, and so this is really this was a labor of love. This is the fairly big book. It's 300 some odd pages. Yeah. But it was really the book I wanted to tell.
Now, do you have these on audio also?
Yeah. So these two are both on audio books. The fourth book I wrote is not, and there's a reason for it. But
the fourth, you skipped one.
Sorry, the third. So a third is
you're working on a fourth. Apparently, that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it?
Yeah. So this book, like I said, this was my first book, and it became wildly popular. It's fairly small, easy to read. Mm-hmm. You can read it in probably 3 hours. But one of the things people who read this book kept saying is this is like a daily reader. You could read this every morning and it would give you some clues to become a better leader. And I never really thought of it. I didn't write it that way, but it gave me the idea for my latest book that just came out this year. It's called You Have the Watch. Mm-hmm. And really what that is it's a guided journal. So it's actually a journal that will take you through 50 leadership themes. It's designed to be on your desk for a year. And so every week you tackle a different theme.
It's like a calendar.
And you read, and there's a lot of reflecting and writing. So inside the book, you're I don't know how much you can see it, but you're reading.
Let me switch my screen. Hold on. I'm sharing my screen.
All right.
There we go.
But yeah, so you can see you're reflecting on a particular subject, and then you usually have a task.
It's kind of hyper focused.
Yeah, and so it's more of a journal than it is more a book, but it's designed for you to be, to go through it over an entire year. Yeah. So it's, one of the things we see with leadership training is that somebody might go to like an hour training and then you're a leader, or you watch a video or you watch a TED talk or whatever, but it's a one-time event, or you read a book, it's a one-time event. Yeah. This is meant to be a year-long event.
Constant.
We need something like that. So
constant reinforcement kind of deal.
Yeah. So this book was written basically on the feedback from my customers and my readers from the first book. So these two are kind of related. I Have the Watch and You Have the Watch are kind of related. And then All in the Same Boat is more a standalone book, essentially.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I like your logo that you got going there.
Yeah. That's on my podcast too. It's this little submarine thing.
Yeah. It's the, what is that part of the submarine called?
Yeah, your conning tower.
The conning tower.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cross at first.
No. Looks like one, though. Could be.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a cross there. So
if it offends you, it is.
It doesn't offend me.
No, I'm just kidding. That was
not at all.
You don't have. I'm sure you have people that listen to this are not offended by a cross.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like I said, I mean, the 2A community is a welcoming community. All walks of life, religions.
Absolutely.
Or non-religion, whatever your choice may be. That's why I try to keep religion and politics. I don't talk a lot of those on the show. I like to keep it positive, because those are two of the biggest, controversial topics that lead to divisiveness and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chaos.
And same thing with our show too. We really want to talk about leadership, and I don't really care where you came from. You can be a good leader, and so that's what we focus on too. The same thing. We don't get into politics too much, although I did talk to a lot of folks that served in Afghanistan right after the withdrawal, and just not to get political, but I wanted to get their feeling.
Yeah, and it's not really political. Again, when you talk about something
right.
like that, and speaking of what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we were there for a long time. You think we could figure out a plan to exit, and why didn't we use a major air base? Why did we do what we did? How we pulled out of there? There's just so many questions that.
But why do you think they did what they did? Do you think it was just knee-jerk bad advice, and they're just like, let's just pull it and go and leave everything? And
I think that they thought
abandon all those people.
I think they thought it would go better than it did. I really thought.
You really think they did?
It was hope. Hope was their strategy. They really hoped it would go well, and it was a disaster. And the thing is, what gets me from a leadership standpoint is no one was held accountable for that, and that I struggle with. That nobody, and it wasn't the soldiers on the ground, the Marines on the ground.
Oh, no.
It was the people making the decisions, and those people are still in power, and that bothers me.
The
only guy that was taken out was that the one lieutenant colonel who just said that same thing. Marine Corps lieutenant colonel said, "Hey, how come no one's being held accountable?" And he lost his job.
Yeah, they held him accountable.
Yeah.
Probably the only one that was pushing, not to do what they did, and they get rid of him.
Yeah, so I think part of leadership is accountability. When you run a ship aground, when you run a submarine aground, you lose your job as a captain of a submarine. If it touches anything other than liquid, you lose your job.
And I think
that's the way it is.
And again, I don't want to talk politics, but again, I think that's the problem with our leadership this day is that there's no accountability whatsoever. And we have to be more stringent, more I don't know what's the word I'm looking for to push accountability on these leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much bothersome. We had the border situation where they were talking about the border guards were whipping, the migrants.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And those guys they got suspended, the border guards, and they were doing their job, and it was just something that was blown out, and even
way blown out of proportion. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, who was held accountable? Where was the forgiveness? Where were these guys reinstated with full pay? No, and that's what's bothersome is that we throw people under the bus in too much in politics, and that's poor leadership. If you're going to lead a business and you're always constantly throwing your people under the bus, you're not a leader. You're
and that's the environment that these current and they're not leaders. Our politicians are not leaders. They don't lead us. And that's a misconception. That's going to get into our Talking Lead Facts to Fight the Myths.
Now it's time for the Talking Lead
Facts to Fight the Myths.
Yeah.
This is politicians are not leaders. They are not elected to be leaders. They are elected to carry out our wishes, our demands, the populace, in what we see fit and how we would like our country, our states, our counties, our cities run. And I think that's where a lot of people, and they're afraid to hold these people accountable because they think they are leaders and they think they're going to get some sort of reprimand if they speak up or out against them. That's a dictatorship, and we're not in a dictatorship in this country. Not yet, anyway. But I think that's, they're trying to shape it into that, to where you're subservient to these politicians, and we're not.
Yeah. They work for us, and I think we sometimes miss that.
They're supposed to. So enough politics. We'll get out of the politics realm, and again, go to Jon's website. It's JONSRENNIE.com, and that's where you can check out his books. You can get them audio, obviously, get the audio versions of those too. And Freudian slipped. Are you working on a fourth?
No.
You are too.
Honestly, I've got a lot of different ideas, but I think probably I'll write a little bit about what it's like to start a business, being a leader in a startup company. Uh-huh. There's something to be said there. There's a whole nother leadership skill set to lead a business from the ground up,
Sure.
which I've been doing for 6 years. So there's something to be said there. There may be a book there. So, but I told my wife, I said, well, it has to have a good ending. Otherwise you can't write a book on it. Right. So
I don't know.
so we're still building our business. So.
Some books that don't have good endings, but
Right. That's right.
So on our facts to fight the myth, we talked about this prior too. Do you have a fact to fight the myth maybe that's related to the submarine life, the corporate life, maybe concealed carry, hunting? What is it? What do you got?
One of the things I noticed, like coming into the civilian world as being former military, is that everyone sort of, the myth of a the myth of a military leader is that they're all command and control. That I'm going to come in and I'm going to dictate how things are to be done. And the facts are, especially on a submarine, is that there is no real hierarchy on a submarine. Yes, we had ranks, but we all lived in the same metal tube. We ate the same food. We slept in the same size racks. There was no special.
Smelled
benefit.
The same stinky air.
Absolutely. When we couldn't make fresh water, we didn't have showers. When the galley was secured for maintenance or drills, we all ate cold cuts. So we suffered together. And so there's less of the separation between officers and enlisted in the submarine community more than anything. And so we were used to operating together, in tight spaces, working as a team to get things done. So command and control is not what I'm about. It's about working with people to get things done. So I think that was a big myth I never even thought about it, but when I came into an organization and I saw I was former military, they're like, "Oh, great! Here comes this guy."
Here comes the whips and chains.
Tell us what to do. Yeah, but it's not true at all. So, in fact, even if you think about it, Simon Sinek wrote the book "Leaders Eat Last." Well, that's something the military leaders have always done. That they put their people in front of themselves. It happens in the Marine Corps. It happens in the Army. It happens across in all military branches. So, there's a myth that military leaders are a certain way, but it's completely false.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So I got another question about submarine, and then I want to go to our listener questions.
Okay.
We'll field some of those. What is the scariest or most disturbing time that you had while you're on the submarine?
So I wrote about it in my All in the Same Boat. It's chapter 8. The chapter 8 is called Tough Times, and I was in the North Atlantic for a winter storm that lasted nearly 2 weeks, and it was brutal. It was my first patrol, my first deployment, first time being away from home, and we were taking rolls, close to 45-degree rolls each way, submerged below the surface of the ocean.
Oh wow!
It was dreadful. Like, yeah, it was dreadful. I remember thinking, "There's just no way I can make a career out of this. This is awful." But even the most senior sailors were seasick. It was miserable for, like I said, for almost 2 weeks.
Oh wow!
In the North Atlantic, and we would when we come to periscope depth, the back of a submarine, of a Trident submarine or an Ohio class, is flat, and so you get the surface effect where the waves will pull the boat, and so what's called broaching. Broaching means the whole boat comes out of the water, and there was so much wave action that we kept broaching the boat, and the propeller was coming out of the water, and it was scary for me. It's funny because our captain didn't seem bothered at all. I mean,
wasn't his first rodeo, probably, huh?
No, it wasn't his first rodeo. It was my first rodeo.
It was yours. So you thought it was the end of times during that storm?
Oh, huh? We would sit down to have a meal, and the plates, everything was just going down, up and down the table, and it was just brutal. It was brutal.
That's a question too, is how do the plates stay on the table? Is there some sort of a special plate that you guys have, or something you attach them, like Velcro?
You hold on to it.
You just hold on to it and hope you don't spill it, huh?
Yeah, so we did have a place for our coffee cups, and that's kind of a funny thing. Submarines, they have these almost like cup holders all over the submarine. They're called zarfs, and that's the name. Zarf. That's what they're called.
Okay.
And that's just what we called them. That's where you put your coffee cup in.
Do you know where that term came from?
I don't know. It probably has some interesting origin story, but there was a lot of weird little names. Like anytime you found a little hole where you could store stuff or put stuff, that was called a puka. And I think that's actually a Hawaiian term, but I don't know where Zarf came from at all. But we had a lot of weird,
names for things.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. All right, let's go to some listener questions here. And
Okay.
while I'm looking these up, is there something that maybe we were talking about that you wanted to expand upon?
Yeah, it's just I would say this is that being on a submarine is a lot like being on a spaceship. Like the guys that go out in the space station, they live for 6 months. It's very similar to that because what's outside the hull can kill you. What's outside the spacecraft can kill you, right? So your enemy is two things. One is, for us, it was the Soviet Union, but it was also the crushing pressure of the seawater that wanted to get inside the people tank, right? So we had a common enemy on the inside that boat was to keep the seawater out of the boat.
Did you ever have any enemy encounters?
Yeah, so in the beginning when the Soviets were very active, we would have a lot of mostly surface ships would be sort of harassing us, trying to get photos of us and trying to listen to our engines and things like that. Yeah.
But no like depth charges or anything like that? You never had like an attack on you?
No. It was a Cold War for a reason. It wasn't a hot war. So we didn't
Did you ever get to fire the torpedoes?
Yes, fire torpedoes a lot. We used to go down every other patrol. We'd go down to the Caribbean, down to AUTEC testing range. We fired torpedoes. And then I fired 4 missiles as well, too. I got a chance to fire 4 Trident missiles during different testing that we did. So, but yeah, I got a chance to fire 4.
Do you have like targets on a land somewhere or you got boats out
on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? Yes.
On the other side of the Atlantic, yeah. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to Instagram here, and I'll take the first one here. Arms of Cascadia. How do you deal with the lack of daylight while underwater? I imagine it messes with sailors' circadian rhythm pretty badly.
Yeah, so it does. It really does mess with you. Like I said, not knowing night and day you sort of got used to it after a while, but it's certainly, you didn't know if you were coming or going. If you didn't know, unless you went to periscope depth and looked through the periscope, you wouldn't know if it was daylight or night. So yeah, that did mess with us. So, what do they call that? That SAD, seasonal affective disorder. People get that in the wintertime when they don't get sunlight.
You get depressed.
I think we had that on the submarine, to be honest.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty pale dudes. So
you answered most of this one. Brett Badal says, what was your role? We talked about that. Also talk about the weirdest systems malfunction you had to deal with underway or underwater.
Well, I was the machinery division officer for a while, and that meant I had the 2 evaporator units. That's where we made our fresh water. And so they were notorious for going down. They were very difficult pieces of equipment to keep maintained. And so it's kind of funny because whenever we lose fresh water, the first thing we do is secure the showers. But after a while, I figured this out. So what I would do is whenever they go down, I'd go take a shower myself. Before I told the captain, go take a nice hot shower. And then I would get my uniform back on and I go tell the captain. I said, well, Captain, both of the evaporators are down. We have to secure showers. He's like, all right, so let's secure the showers. But I always got my shower in first before we did that.
He's like, just 1 minute. Well, I got something to
do. Yeah.
This is a good one here. Here we go. Bailey Muller 80. What sorts of firearms are kept on a submarine? What do you see as the next innovation in submarine warfare or technology?
Well, I think the question, a couple of things. One is how do we resupply submarines at sea with potentially using drones, and how can we use drones both in the air and also underwater to support the mission? So how do we use underwater drones and flying drones to support the missions that we have? So can you imagine if you went to periscope depth and you also launched a an aerial drone which could see, long distance to see what was going on out there. That would interface with the submarine, and you get a better, eye in the sky essentially for what's going on. So yeah, I can see the use of unmanned drones both underwater and in the air to support submarine operations.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're not doing that.
Yeah, maybe they do already. I don't know.
I would just that would be just like one of those like, of course they are. If they aren't, then what sorts of firearms are kept on a submarine?
So that's kind of an interesting question. So we had 1911s for handguns. So we had shotguns, pump shotguns, and then we had M14s. We had M14 rifles. So we had only 3 types of weapons. Now I know they've got M60s that they mount on the sail for when you're in port and what have you. But that's back in the day. We had M14s, shotguns, and 45s. That's all we. And I used to have to carry a 45 whenever we were doing any work with the weapons. So when we were in port and we were doing warhead changes and stuff, I carried a 45 during that time, because there are certain points where deadly force was authorized if you got beyond certain areas. So we had to defend that. So
yeah, were there any instances on any of your deployments to where crew-wise you had to break out a firearm?
Yeah, I tell a story in the book where the base duty officer failed to inform me. I was the ship's duty officer at night. They were doing a mock battle on one of the buildings on the waterfront. So they had Marines doing a fake invasion, if you will, or protection operation. And so I was the ship's duty officer, and then I hear my topside watch calls over the 1MC, which is the announcement in the whole boat, saying, repel boarders, which means we've got people trying to break in. And I hear automatic gunfire coming over the 1MC. And so we, at that point, locked and loaded, prepared to.
Pucker factor went up.
Yeah, we secured the ship. And I was like, this is not a drill, because, I was not informed of anything happening on base. And I got on the periscope and looked. I could see, troops running towards the covered dry dock area. And I didn't really know what was going on until I noticed. I had trained with the Marines, and so I happened to catch that all the M16s they were carrying had the blank fire adapter on the end of it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I knew it was a drill and that they were doing something, but it wasn't. So we secured quickly from the drill. But we had locked and loaded. We were ready to defend the boat. We didn't know what was going on. But so
that was a miscommunication.
Oh yeah,
that could have been tragic.
I called up as lieutenant commander, which he outranked me on the base duty officer, and I chewed him out. And then I broke the secured phone, the Stu 3 phone. I smashed it into a lot of pieces because I was really pissed off that we had loaded weapons and
we were ready to use them.
The captain backed me up, so I did the right.
What kind of a checkoff process do you guys have what are you called? Are you called submariners or what?
Submariners.
Submariners.
Yeah, yep.
Submariners. Is there like a weekly, monthly kind of firearms refreshing course for that you have to get checked out on the weapons? Or
we would, every off crew we would go shoot. So we would shoot all the weapons we would use. We were qualified on the shotgun, the M14, and the 1911. Yeah.
What shotgun were you using?
I can't remember if it was a Remington or a Mossberg. Now I think it might have been the Remington. I have a Mossberg now, but I think we were using the Remington.
Yeah,
and that's the what is it? The 870 Remington 870.
The Remington 870. Yeah. And that's something we haven't talked about. Is we bring up the shotguns. Is that you're an avid bird hunter?
Yeah.
And I got a question here. That was the one I was alluding to a second ago. It said, what is the best bird to hunt if you don't have a bird dog? That's old weird guy asked that.
Dove. Because dove is they fly towards you. So it's the I mean, it's the laziest way to hunt. I think it's the funnest. I didn't grow up dove hunting, but when I moved to the South, they killed doves.
One of the
here, so-
tastiest birds too, bacon wrapped dove.
Yeah, absolutely. The dove breast wrapped in bacon with some jalapeno. It's delicious, but it's a blast. I mean, it's so much fun to. You basically, for those who don't know, have never done it before, you basically sit on a 5-gallon bucket in the field, and the birds come to you, and you stand up and you shoot them, and they land typically right at your feet. So
Yeah.
you don't really need a dog. I mean, sometimes they'll get lost in the brush, but you really don't need a dog. So I would say dove's probably the best.
What's your favorite bird hunt?
Well, I grew up hunting rough grouse in New England, so grouse is absolutely my favorite. We hunt grouse and woodcock, and they're just such a challenge because we spend a lot of time. We'll be in the field maybe hiking 8 to 10 miles in a day up the side of mountains and what have you. Look, trying to find these birds and where their habitat is. So it's very challenging. When you shoot, it's what we call snap shooting. So it doesn't matter how good you are, with sporting clays, you have to react to these birds
a lot quicker,
they're moving so fast. Yeah. So it's snap shooting. It's a blast. It's so much challenge. It's so difficult. I think about it sometimes, I used to deer hunt. I don't do it anymore, but deer hunting, you might set up and you spend your whole season getting your rifle ready and prepping your gear and all that, and you may take one shot in a season. Whereas bird hunting, you might take a box, a box in a day. So to me, that's more fun.
Get a lot of shooting in.
A lot more things to do, a lot more shooting, a lot more of a challenge.
Do you use a different shotgun for different birds?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but I have a favorite. I have an over and under Ruger Red Label that is just it's my baby. I just absolutely love that gun. It's got shorter barrels because of the where we hunt in the brush and what have you. So you want to be a little bit lighter, a little bit shorter. So absolutely love that gun. So they don't make them anymore, unfortunately.
What is it called? The red what?
It's a Ruger Red Label.
I'm looking it up now.
It's an over and under. And I could change out the chokes, and so just a great field gun.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's my baby. Yeah. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the field with that one, so it's just a great gun. So and just solid. I'm a Ruger fan. When growing up, there used to be a lot of Ruger factories in New England. There still are.
Mm-hmm.
I just always I have a lot of Rugers. I like Ruger as a brand. I've always thought of it as sort of like the Toyota. It's maybe a little bit cheaper, but you still get good quality. Maybe I don't know. That's my view of the world. I'm not a pure gun guy. Like probably some people are listening to me and yelling at the screen right now. I'm sure.
Check out Nemo Arms.
Okay.
And their shotguns. They're not cheap. But they're really nice shot. I think you'll like their over and unders. Really, they're heirloom quality type firearms. They're really nice. So
one of the things that we got to be careful with, like the kind of hunting we do, is because we're in the deep woods and we're going through swamps and trees, is that our weapons get beat up pretty good. So
sure.
We're always finding the balance between like a good, solid, dependable firearm and also one that's you don't mind getting beat up in the field.
Well, when I say heirloom quality, I mean it's going to last. It's a durable, solid, but they're a work of art, though. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Oh yeah.
And they're not a sponsor either. So I mean,
I'll check it out. The problem is I'll fall in love with them. It's so easy to fall in love.
You're going to cuss me. You're definitely going to cuss me.
Yeah.
So when does hunting season start where you're at for birds?
It'd be October. So I'm heading up, I think the second week in October to go up for the week that we've got reserved.
Okay.
So, and we hunt the same land I've been hunting since I was 13 years old. So it's kind of fun to get up there with friends. And
is that family land?
No. It's owned by paper mills and the state. There's some sort of a joint arrangement there, but it's the northern part of New Hampshire is pretty remote, so it's you could drive for hours on dirt roads up there, and it's great.
Do you do turkey hunting?
No, I've never done turkey hunting. Although I know my brother is a wildlife. He's a wildlife biologist, but he's also a hunting and fishing guide for New Hampshire and Maine, and he does turkey hunts, black bear, grouse, woodcock, deer, moose. But Yeah, he's a big turkey hunter. So one of these days I got to get up there and do a turkey season. So
Yeah. Definitely. Let's see. There's one question here, Brett Badal on Facebook. What's the most challenging spot you found yourself in as a leader while serving? How did you turn the situation around and keep your people focused?
Yeah, I mean, I tell a story in All in the Same Boat about we had a device inside the reactor that failed that had to be replaced. And it fell within my responsibility to develop the maintenance procedure to go in and actually take that piece of equipment out and replace it with a new piece of equipment. Of course, we did it when the reactor was shut down and we were in port. But just to develop the procedure took me months to develop and write the procedure, and because everything had to be choreographed, because you had to limit the amount of time that people were going to be inside the reactor compartment doing this work, because it was actually right on top of the reactor itself. So we had to have teams go in, and they were a limited certain amount of time they could be in there. So everything had to be staged and choreographed. All the tools had to be checked in, checked out. And it was one of the most complicated things I'd ever done in my life. And I was young. I was still a new leader on the boat. But after that event, I think I solidified my role as the leader of that department. They saw the amount of work I put in and the fact that we did it safely, we did it correctly. And it was the first time that part had ever been replaced on a Ohio-class submarine. So we had to develop the whole procedure and how to do it. So, yeah, it solidified my role as the leader of that department after that.
Yeah. Corey Brown asked, do you know the story about a sub taking out a train?
Yeah. I love, if you want to have
never
some
heard
fun,
that.
read some of the stories of the World War II submarine crews and the officers and men. They did some amazing things. That was the USS Barb. And they went and took out a train. They went on land. I think they took out the bridge that the train was going across and took out the train. So they actually painted a train on there. So you have these war flags that each ship, and they're sort of like these homemade flags of all the shipping that they sink. And they actually had a train on their battle flag, which is pretty wild. Yeah,
that'd be unique, I bet, too.
Yeah. They went
submarine.
on land. They actually went on land and sabotaged this train track. Yeah.
Cool. He also asked, which sub movie is your favorite?
I'm an old traditionalist. I Hunt for Red October. It can't be beat. It just,
Yeah, I can watch that over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a classic movie. It's a classic Cold War submarine movie. Not very realistic, but it's a great story. So
yeah. So when we were talking yesterday, you were talking about that you are a concealed carry person. What is your preferred carry?
Yeah, I'm afraid to say this because
nobody will judge you. I promise. Nobody's going to judge you. You will not be judged. Maybe a little bit, but
I have two cars. It's KAHR's Car Firearms. They're out of Worcester, Mass. And I have a 380 and a 9mm version. I have my summer carry, my winter carry. So yeah, I like it. It's a little gun. What I like about it is it's a stable platform. It's when I shoot it, some of the smaller guns will snap when you shoot, and so
a little snappy,
yeah. Yeah, you feel it on your wrists. Well, the car is pretty solid. It shoots like a bigger frame gun, and I just enjoy it. I really like the 9mm. I got the 380 just because it's a little smaller and it's easier to conceal. But yeah, it looks a little bit like a Glock, I guess. But yeah, so yeah. I enjoy it. My oldest son was getting his concealed carry, and he was looking at guns, and he eventually got a Car 9. He really likes the way it shoots, and I've never had any jams, any problems with it. It's been reliable for me. So
and that's what I tell people too. People always come up to me and say, "Hey, which firearm should I get? I'm considering a carry or whatever," and I liken it to like a pair of shoes.
Yeah,
so everybody's got a different size foot, and different shoes fit people differently. It's like I can't wear Nikes. Nikes just don't fit my foot at all, and I don't like Nikes. But there are Michael Jordan and people that just absolutely swear by Nike. But go to the gun range. A lot of these places have rental programs where you can rent the guns, you can try them out before you buy them, and just see what feels better in your hand. And that's the best advice that I can give people.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is your concealed carry is going to get beat up a little bit. You're getting in and out of cars. It's going to get scratched. It's going to
have sweat on them. You're going to get holster marks on them. Yeah.
Again, I'm looking for reliability, but I don't want to spend a lot of money either. So that's just me.
So you're frugal, I take it.
Well, I want bang for the buck. I want good, so I did a lot of research before I bought the car, and I really liked it once I got it. So that's why I went and got the 380 version of it, because I just loved it. So the 9.
So even being trained in the military on, I would assume you had a SIG. I don't know. What did you have? What was your 1911? What was your 1911?
It was Colt 1911.
Is it Colt 1911? Okay.
Yeah. That's the way I trained on. I never had anything but a 45 in my time in the military. So I'm old school, I guess.
Did you get to take your service pistol with you, or get the option to purchase it?
No, in fact, I still want to add a 1911 to my
your arsenal,
my armory,
my
arsenal. But I want to get one that was just like what I had. I want the government model version of it, because it's something
they're out there. They're available.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking for one that I can afford. You know me, I'm cheap.
You can afford. You can afford anything you want. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So concealed carry. You're a hunter. Was there anything else about the hunting, the bird hunting, that you wanted to convey to our listeners? I know turkey hunting is coming up here close in Tennessee, and probably around the country, but I think you should do that. I think you should go on a turkey hunt. It's completely different than any of the other bird hunts that you've been on. Yeah.
No, I'd like to. It's funny.
And you don't need a dog for turkey hunting either.
No, you don't at all. Yeah, no, I just haven't had the opportunity. I just didn't. For whatever reason, when my brother was getting big in the turkey hunting, I was still in the military, and he's still back in New England. I didn't connect. I didn't have anybody that wanted. If anyone said, "Do you want to go turkey hunting?" I'd say yes. It just hadn't come up. So.
Yeah, you haven't been offered the opportunity, huh? Well, you come down to Tennessee and we'll go turkey hunting.
All right, that sounds good. But no, I think grouse hunting is sort of like an old, New England thing, and I guess it's kind of fun to do. I think they do it in Michigan as well, but it's typically in the northern climates, and it's just
no dogs required for that.
No, we bring dogs. Yeah, we bring dogs. We have 2 dogs. We have a German short-hair pointer, and we have a lab that. So you have a flusher and a pointer that work together. Sometimes they work together. If things are working well, they work together.
So let's reward our listeners, John. We like to reward those that participate. And I apologize, Leadheads. It was a late post for your questions. If you didn't get an opportunity, just keep a lookout. We're always posting questions for our guest. That's how you participate. That's how we reward you. If you're sending us Jackwagon nominations, Leadhead Brigade Hero nominations, if you're leaving comments on the podcast, we go everywhere. We try to reward you for doing awesome stuff to help support the show. And today, John has offered up one each of his books to you listeners. And John, do you want to give those all 3 to one, or do you want to spread the love and give 3 different listeners your books?
Well, let's spread the love. Why not?
I like that. I definitely like that. So of the questions that I read, what was your favorite? Which one was your favorite?
Oh, let's see. The one with the submarine movie, favorite submarine movie.
Okay.
And I think it was the same one. It was the equipment.
Corey Brown asked, what was he asked several. Yeah. The one I read was, do you know the story about the sub taking out a train?
Oh, right. That's the one. Yeah.
And your favorite sub movie.
The Barb. So that's definitely a winner right there.
Okay. There you go. Corey Brown, you have one. Which book we going to reward?
We're going to go all on the same boat. That's the biggie.
Ah, nice. Yeah. All in the same boat for Corey Brown. So Corey, email me talkinglead@gmail.com, and I will forward your info on to John for the book.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what the first question was. That was a good
The very first one was the arms of Cascadia. How do you deal with the lack of daylight while underwater?
with circadian rhythm. What is it?
Circadian or circadian. I don't know if he spelled it right or not, but
that wins a book just for that word.
For that word, whether he got it right or not.
So we'll go with I have the watch.
I have the watch. So Arms of Cascadia, email me. Let me know which book that you won, and I'll forward your info. Of course, we need your mailing address as well. And then book 3. Who do we want to? Are you on social media right now? Are you on Instagram? Can you pull Instagram up?
Yeah.
Pull it up and then go to that post that I did, and I'll just let you. And while you're doing that, here's one that requires no answer. Okay.
Okay.
Slug Nutty. Is it true that in the submarine service that 120 men go down and 60 couples come up?
Slug Nutty gets no book.
No.
But he needs to know that there's an expression in the Navy. It's not gay if it's underway. So just understand that. And my son who's in the Navy, he also said it's not queer if you're by the pier too. So I don't know what that means, but yeah. So
just another disassociative term, I guess. But
absolutely,
Slug Nutty wins the Smart Ass Award for this.
He gets the Smart Ass Award. Yeah. I thought the old weird guy had a good question about the best birds to hunt if you don't have a bird dog.
There you go, old weird guy.
I thought that was good.
That's a good. So which one does he win?
Well, we'll give him You Have the Watch. Well, you know what? Let's give him I Have the Watch because he's probably old.
I have the watch. Weird. There you go.
Yeah.
So, old weird guy, I have the watch. Email me, talkinglet@gmail.com. You know the routine. So, I think that's most of the question. I know you reposted it. Did you get any questions on your post that you did?
I did not. No.
Oh, come on.
I don't think so.
Come on, followers of Jon. Questions, participate. That's how you win on this show. You listen, you participate, you win. I've got a packet of Seal 1 that I would like to award to one of our listeners. And it's not going to be anybody that posted a question. I am actually going to go to our Instagram page. And if you have tagged me or reshared one of my posts, and I got to go. There's a way to do this on Instagram, so just bear with me. Oh, here it is. Okay, boom. So, here we go. PNW Chupacabra. 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 Tagged me in a post. So if you're an American, if you live in America, email me, talkinglet@gmail.com. You won some Seal 1. There's the post he did. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Oh, yeah.
So we do this other show. It's called the Talking Lead AK Corner, Jon. And we just talk AK-47s on this episode. And we get a lot of listeners that are really into the AK-47. So PNW, you win some Seal 1. Email me, talkinglet@gmail.com. And as a reminder, any unclaimed prizes we send to Sheepdog IA, Sheepdog Impact Assistance. That's an organization, Jon, that helps our veteran, wounded men and women of the military, law enforcement, first responders by doing all sorts of things. They have outdoor adventures. They have fundraising events. They have hunts. They have all kinds of cool things that they do to help keep our men and women off the couch and keep them active, to help cut down on the suicide rate, because we know that, as you just said, when they retire, they still have that desire to serve, to do something. They put together disaster recovery missions, so when there's flooded areas or there's disaster by Mother Nature, tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever it may be, they'll put together disaster recovery teams to go out and help, whether it's cutting down trees or putting down sandbags or providing food or whatever's needed. Sheepdog Impact Assistance. You got to check them out, sheepdogia.org, and go donate your time, donate your money, donate your resources. They definitely need your help. Sergeant Major Lance Nutt, we've had him on the show several times. So any unclaimed prizes, we automatically donate those to Sheepdog Impact Assistance.
Great.
But great show, man. I appreciate you, John, taking the time to be on. I know it's probably not your normal interview, but
no, not at all. But I loved it. I was just intimidated with all these, with the firearm questions. I don't want to say something that's not,
expecting a show called Talking Lead, and it's Talking Lead.
It wasn't Talking Lead. It was Talking Lead.
When did you have that epiphany that it wasn't Talking Lead? When
we talked yesterday, I had no idea. So I do so many podcasts that I see lead in the title of most podcasts I'm on. So I just saw lead, and I'm.
Oh yeah, I get that all the time too. I've got my truck wrapped with our logo, and I've got my shirts and everything. People come up to me and go, "What's Talking Lead?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, we're a dog training service," and I was like, "You couldn't tell with the bullets and all our sponsors that are on the vehicle," and it's like. Yeah, here's your sign.
I get it now. Yeah.
So I'm glad it worked out though, and I do really appreciate you taking the time to be on. This has been one of my favorite interviews that I've done. We've never had a submariner on the show before, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, we're one of the branches of the military that's kind of small, and not a lot of people who have served on submarines. So yeah, we're a little bit of a rare bird. So yeah, it's fun to talk about it because it was such a big part of my life, and it's something I just dreamed as a youth to want to do, and I get a chance to do that, and serve our country during a whole different time. People probably don't realize what the Cold War was like, but with Reagan coming into office and building up the Navy and winning the Cold War, it's fun to be a part of that and to kind of write that chapter. Be a part of that chapter, be part of history. And it's a good launching point for our career, for sure.
Absolutely. And one more time, give everybody where they can go, your website, your social medias. I want you Leadheads to go and follow John and let him know that you're Leadhead Brigade and you appreciate him being on the show, even though he thought it was a leadership show.
My website is jonsrennie.com, and you can spell John any way you want. It'll get there. But all my social media links are out there. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm very active on Instagram. I run a podcast called Deep Leadership. It's on every podcast station. We interview military leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, researchers. So it's all about leadership. So if you're listening in, you're like leading a company, or you work in management, and we're at work, this is a good place to go and learn some skills to get better, to manage your career better, to be able to get the best results from your team. And it's all about building a world with better bosses. That's what I write my books for. That's why I do my podcast. It's all about trying to make better bosses in the next generation. See if we can do a little bit better than we did this one. So,
well, you just did a great job leading on this podcast. So thank you again for your time. Leadheads, again, go show him some love. Show all our sponsors love. Mission First Tactical. Go to missionfirsttactical.com. Use the code Leadhead. You're going to get 20% off. I'd like to give you an additional 5%. Maybe we can talk Dave into that. But go check them out. Mission First Tactical. Seal1.com for all your gun cleaning, lubrication, and corrosive protection. It works on anything. It'll work great on your shotgun too, John. So I'll have some sent to you. I'll send you some Seal 1.
Look at that.
We'll send you some Mission First stuff too. Seal1.com, use the code Leadhead. You're going to get 25% off there. 1776 United. You like the T-shirt that I'm wearing? You get our Talking Lead, Talking Lead if you're so inclined. T-shirts, you go to 1776 United. If you've seen some of my posts, I've worn some of their other shirts. You can anything there. Talking Lead is the code, 20% off. I was talking about our flashlights earlier from ASP USA, and I don't have them handy now. Here's one right here. They got cool, awesome flashlights. They do all kinds of different trickeries, but great flashlights. ASP USA, use the code all caps Leadhead to get 15% off. Factory 47 for our AK Corner t-shirts and sweaters and sweatshirts and all the cool stuff that they have there. And then IWI US, thank them. Let them know that your Leadheads don't have a discount code for you there yet. You can go to Kel-Tec and get a nice discount in their pro shop. Use the code LEADHEAD, 15% off at Kel-Tec. Anything but their firearms, you're going to get a discount there. But go show all our sponsors and friends of the show some love and let them know you're Leadhead. I'm sure if they don't have a discount code, we can get one set up for you. Just ask. All right, Leadheads, that does it for another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. Appreciate each and every one of you tuning in every week and supporting the show and supporting our sponsors. And until then, as always, keep your loved ones close.
And keep your firearms closer. And remember, you have the watch.